in our legal terminology, the term sodomy, meaning some unnatural sex act, of course, coming from the town of Sodom and the biblical story of what happened there. And, of course, probably you've sat under a preacher who preaches fire and brimstone, like fell on Sodom and Gomorrah. So that story, that account is still in our culture. It's embedded in our culture. It's part of our culture yet today. But were these real places? Did these things really happen like the Bible tells us? Well, most scholars would say no. How could fire fall out of heaven? That's a myth. That's a legend made up to explain some ruins. That's what you'll read in the books. Well, let's have a closer look. Let's get our slides going here, and I'll take you to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Thank you. Now, we first encounter these places. See if I can get back there. Okay. In Genesis chapter 13, and this is the account of Abraham and Lot separating because their flocks and herds had grown so large. That thing's got a mind of its own. I didn't touch it. Who's hitting that button there? And so Abraham said to his nephew Lot, well, you choose the part of the land where you want to go. Boy, oh boy, we got a runaway slide projector here. And I'll take whatever's left over. So here's the account. It says Lot lifted up his eyes. I got to read fast. Whoa, whoa! Beheld all the plain of Jordan. It was well watered, and in the Hebrew it means intensely irrigated. Everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and it was like the garden of the Lord. It was like the Garden of Eden. This was a beautiful, lush area that Lot could see. Now, at this time, they're on the west side of the Jordan Valley, and they're looking eastward down toward the Dead Sea. And this is what Lot is looking at. And so then it tells us that Abraham stayed in Canaan, that area west of the Jordan Valley, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain. He pitched his tent near Sodom. Now, the men of Sodom were wicked, were sinning greatly against the Lord. Now, this is kind of a preview of the account that's going to follow on in a few chapters. Now, here we learn quite a few things. Well, first of all, it was well watered, it was irrigated, and it was a very lush area. And then, here in verse 12, it says, these are the cities of the plain. And that phrase, that name occurs a number of times in the Old Testament. And in the Hebrew, it's what we call the construct state. The two words, cities and plain, are in the construct state, and they're linked together very closely. But they're not the cities in the plain or on the plain, they're of the plain. The cities have a very close relationship with the plain, although they're not. If they were in the plain or on the plain, there would have been a different Hebrew wording here, but the construct state indicates they were closely related to the plain. So Lot liked this area, and that's where he went, and he pitched his tents near Sodom. And, of course, later on we have the account of this great wickedness and then God's judgment of these cities because of their wickedness. And throughout the Old Testament then, Sodom and Gomorrah become examples of how God judges sin. And right into the New Testament, in fact, Jesus himself referred to these places and the destruction. Now, we are dealing with the area down to the southeast of the Dead Sea, down in this area here. Now, in Abraham's day, the Dead Sea stopped right here at the Lisan Peninsula. And in fact, that's where the Dead Sea stops today because of the drop in level of the Dead Sea. And the level has risen and fallen over the centuries, and in Abraham's day, we know that it ended right here. And this northern part of the Dead Sea is very, very deep. The southern part, when there is a southern part, is just a shallow basin. It's not deep at all. And so when the level begins to drop, then this southern part just totally dries up, and you're left with the northern part. That's what we have today, and that's the way it was in Abraham's day. And so this southern area was all a big flat valley. We talked about the Rift Valley when we talked about Jericho, and here it is on this map. Starts up there in Syria, comes down through the Red Sea, all the way down into Africa. And so the Dead Sea is part of that rift system, and as I mentioned earlier, is subject to earthquakes, and that seems to be what happened with regard to Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, in Genesis 14:8, we have the 5 cities of the plain mentioned. The Sodom and Gomorrah were the most famous of the 5, but altogether there were 5 cities of the plain. And this is talking about the war that took place between a coalition of kings who came from Mesopotamia, and they attacked the cities of the plain. And you remember Lot was captured during that battle and taken captive, and Abraham had to rescue him. Well, here we have all the cities named. Then the king of Sodom, king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim. And this word Siddim indicates an agricultural area that is plowed up and so on, and that seems to be the area just south of the Dead Sea, part of this plain or valley area. On the left, we have an aerial view looking south toward that shallow basin, which is not there today and wasn't there in Abraham's day, but it gives you a nice overview of the location of these sites that have been discovered now, that have been identified as the cities of the plain. The northernmost site is located right here at the head of this, what's called the Lisan Peninsula, that juts out. Lisan is the Arabic word for tongue. And so right here at the head of the Lisan is Babadra, and then we have 4 other sites located on the edge of that valley going southward from Babadra. Now on the right is a schematic cross-section through the Dead Sea with our deep northern section here on the right, and then this shallow basin here to the south. And you notice the artist has drawn some ruins there at the bottom of the basin. Well, this, in fact, was the popular theory about Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities of the plain, that they were located in that southern basin. Then the level of the Dead Sea rose, covered the cities